episode of the Chatting in the City podcast, brought to you by the V-TRaC lab at the University of Ottawa. I'm here with a very, very special guest, professor of psychology, clinical psychologist, and the researcher in Mental Health Disparities. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
All right. Dr. Monnica Williams, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for asking me, inviting me, thinking about me and my work.
It's my pleasure. So I guess, first of all, I would like to ask you how you got into the research you're doing, specifically about psychedelics and how it relates to the Black community. How did you get started? Did you always find it an area of, interest?
Actually, quite the contrary. I had no interest at all in psychedelics for most of my career. It was really about maybe 6 years ago, an organization reached out to me called MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. And they were preparing for phase 3 trials of MDMA for PTSD. MDMA, people might know as ecstasy on the street. And they noticed that they had not had, just about any people of color in either phase 1 and 2 studies, and they wanted to do better for phase 3. So they saw an article in the New York Times about me and my work around racial trauma, and they thought, well, maybe I'd have some ideas for helping them diversify their work.
So that's how it started 6 years ago.
That's how it started, yeah.
And was that just around the time when sort of there was a resurgence, people getting more interested into psychedelics, sort of bringing it back because, people were really interested in it in the 50s and 60s, but then something happened, it kind of just went away?
Yeah, there's definitely been a resurgence. And yeah, for people who don't know, there actually was a lot of psychedelic research going on in the 50s and 60s, and mental health professionals were using psychedelics regularly in therapy for treatment of addictions, believe it or not, and alcoholism. And then due to political reasons, of psychedelics were made illegal. And this had a ripple effect all over the world and shut down all the research studies. So in the last 10 years, there's been an effort to sort of slowly bring back the research to show that there's something there worth studying, and that there are mental health benefits for people, in combination with therapy for psychedelics.
Right. And you mentioned MAPS briefly as they were doing the MDMA study. How is it? Because obviously, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I know nothing about how to, help someone in a psychotherapeutic context. How do you use a psychedelic within the context of, psychotherapy?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions. People think that, I'm going to just pop a psychedelic and then I'll be cured of my PTSD, or, in terms of what I study, racial trauma. And in fact, there have been some misleading media pieces about the work that we're doing, sort of implying that if you want to cure your racial trauma, just go pop some ecstasy or LSD. And that's not what we're saying at all. It's actually quite a process. And I would say it's not even necessarily faster or, than traditional therapy for PTSD. But what strikes me about it is it seems to be more gentle, more humane in terms of how we treat PTSD. In traditional sort of a behavioral type of treatment for PTSD, people come in to the therapist's office and they're going to talk in detail about their traumatic experiences. And that's very, very hard for clients to do. And it's often hard for therapists to hear because the person has to repeat their trauma in detail every session, and even record it and listen to it as homework every day. This is tough. So this isn't what happens with the psychedelic therapy. It's almost like the psychedelics are almost like a medicine that's kind of helping the brain and the mind heal on their own. And for some people that will be talking in more detail about their trauma, but a lot of people, they just get new insights and new perspectives just from the experience of the psychedelic. And then what happens is the therapist can help them process what came up for them and make sense out of it. And so that's how the therapy works.
And I'm assuming it'd be over probably months or a year. And is there, do you keep the same dose the same dosage of the psychedelic that you're giving them, or do you increase, do you decrease across time, or how does it go?
Yeah, well, so the treatment, it is fairly short term. For the research studies, it's been more like months than years. And I think, and it's really only, for the MDMA studies we did, it's only 3 doses of MDMA. That's all it took. So, so the person would have some preparatory therapy at the beginning, really, really long therapy session on the MDMA, and then the next day, integration session where they talk about what came up for them. And we do this 3 times. And some people only actually need it twice and they're better. Some people maybe need it 4 times, but by and large, it's a pretty remarkable process, I'd say.
And for, I guess, the racial trauma and as it relates to the Black community, I'm very curious, and that was also a question I asked you when I reached out to you, is how do you try to get this sort of emerging, field of medicine into the Black community? Because we already know the Black community doesn't necessarily trust, health services in general. So then how do you actually get them to, convince them that, hey, there's this new thing that's coming up, it's psychedelics, and it actually might help you within a therapeutic context?
Yeah, well, I think it's really important for Black people to see other Black people involved in this work. And so that's one reason I'm kind of putting my face out there, because I want the Black community to know there's this really cool cutting edge treatment that's coming. And I want us to all have a piece in it, because you know what, right now, the way things are looking, we're not going to have a piece. And I want to make sure that our communities, which are very traumatized, have the opportunity to get the healing and the benefits from this sort of new approach to mental health.
And to what degree is it, I'm assuming most of the studies that are being done on psychedelics are in the States. I think some of them were in the UK as well. But what's it like here in Canada? Because, we are in Canada, so.
Right. Well, just like in the States, there's a lot of regulatory hurdles to pass in order to even be able to do the research. So I just got here in Canada like a year and a half ago. I was here 4 or 5 months, and then everything was locked down. So needless to say, the research has stalled a bit because a lot of it's on hold due to COVID, because you just can't bring people into the clinic and give them psychedelics or anything for that matter. And then also just all the processes that you have to do even to get the approvals and so forth. This is all slowed down greatly. So my research in Canada is going really slow. That being said, I am still doing some research in the States. So that was shut down temporarily as well, but it's picking back up. And I'm hoping to be able to get through all of the red tape that I need to start doing the work here. We're really excited about doing some work looking at MDMA for traumatized refugees. And also we want to do a microdosing study of psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms, to see if that can help people who are suffering from racial trauma just by taking a little bit every day, over a few weeks or a few months. So those are the projects we're working on getting through the red tape right now, and hoping to start soon.
Yeah, those sound amazing. Especially, I think everybody has heard about microdosing psilocybin. So to actually have a study empirically looking at that to see if it actually works, that'd be great, especially within, you said refugees. I can neither confirm nor deny that I've ever seen or touched psychedelics. I will not say that here on this podcast. But yeah, it's another question relating to that is, what's the difference to you in terms of research in the States versus here? You just said you're new here. So do you feel like there's a slight difference in terms of how we approach research here?
I think there's probably more similarities than differences, but I will say that people seem to be more open to the work that I'm doing here. I had a lot of obstacles in the States to doing the research. Actually, that's why I ended up leaving the University of Connecticut, because the institution wasn't supportive of the work. So it seemed like there was a lot more opportunity to do the work here. They just legalized cannabis here in Canada. So I thought, well, maybe that's a good sign that people are starting to be a little more flexible around some of these things, and they'll at least let us study it. So I've found that people have been very, very welcoming. Other researchers who are doing this work, they've been fantastic. They've all reached out to me and welcomed me, and so I feel really good about doing this work here. And also my colleagues, the deans, there's been a lot of support for it at the University of Ottawa.
It's great to hear, and we're happy to have you. I mean, I can say so myself. And to ask more specifically about the studies themselves, how do you get participants to come in? You try to describe what the study is to them. How do you actually get them to? I mean, obviously you can't force them to, engage in the study or to take anything, but how do you actually get to convince them that this is, beneficial for their health? And it kind of relates to my earlier question about the Black community. How would you essentially get out there, bring them in, and then actually sit down and convince them that this is, this might be beneficial?
Yeah. I mean, this is really important because, for the psychedelic research, there's long lines of people just really dying to get in and get psychedelics for their troubles. But people of color, are not mobbing us to get in for help. So we have to go out into the communities. We have to do a lot of community outreach to raise awareness about our research and what we're doing. And a lot of it is also building trust. So I've been doing this research a long time. I've been doing a lot of anti-racism work. I give a lot of talks and presentations in communities. And then people start to get to know you. And then also, and also we're interested in doing a lot of education around these issues as well. And I think a lot of times when people learn about, all the exciting work that's being done, and also the fact that people of color and black people in particular have not been included, people start to wonder, okay, wait a minute. We know how this works. Something new and cool is happening and we're being left out. So yeah, you're being left out. So let's make sure we're included. And that'll motivate people too, because, we've had just such a long history of either, of not getting, all the goodies, and definitely not when they first arrive. So I think when people realize what's been happening, it can kind of motivate them to want to learn more.
Exactly. And I read a paper you wrote, I think it was last year, I can't remember the title, but it was essentially talking about how the Black community needs more people involved in the research itself, not just as participants, but also as researchers doing the work to show that, this is a safer space, somewhat like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a long history of abusive research against racialized and vulnerable people in the States and Canada and all over the world, actually. So a lot of us have a lot of good reasons to be nervous. And believe me, if, some white guy, in a lab coat says, here, take this rainbow colored pill, it's going to make you feel better. I mean, I'm going to definitely be a little wary of that. I don't think so.
Recently, Portland, was it Portland where they sort of, decriminalized everything?
Yeah, the state of Oregon.
Right. What are your thoughts on that? Because I had a class, drugs and behavior last semester, and I was discussing that with the prof, and she was ecstatic to have, to hear about that. So I'm curious to get your perspective.
Well, I mean, it's very exciting because I think it's showing, sort of the chink in the armor here. I think eventually many other states are going to follow, and before long, the whole country, it'll be available nationwide. And I think, Canada it will be next. So this is very exciting. Of course, there's some concerns because they kind of legalized it across the board, including for therapy. There's no guidelines or regulations or ethical, rules in place for people who want to be psychedelic psychotherapists. So my concern is that you're going to have a lot of people popping out of the woodwork, putting up a shingle saying, hey, come here for psychedelic therapy. And some of those people are going to be great and some of them are going to be terrible. Right. And there's a lot of potential for harm if you don't know what you're doing as a therapist or guide. And that piece concerns me.
Do you feel like you'll be able to train people as psychedelic psychotherapists? Because I mean, you're part of the clinical program at U Ottawa. So I'm curious, Do you have any students who are interested in that work?
Oh, lots of students who are interested in it. In fact, I don't know if you heard, we're starting a training program at U Ottawa for psychedelic psychotherapy.
When?
Well, we've actually already got a micro-credential program in place. It's 3 classes
Okay.
that you could take as at the graduate or undergraduate level. And if you take the 3 classes at the graduate level, you get a certificate. And then also we've got a master's program in the works. And so the certificate program, like the same classes that are in the certificate program are part of the master's program with some additional courses. And so people can get a master's in psychedelic and consciousness studies. And so we're hoping that this will be like an important part of the preparation for people who want to do this work either as clinicians or as clergy in a religious context or as researchers.
And this is as part, it's part of the School of Psychology.
Yeah, it's interdisciplinary actually with, with religious studies as well. And because my partner in crime on this, Anne Vallely, she's an anthropologist in religious studies. And so the 2 of us are launching this together.
That's amazing. I mean, I'm just finishing now and you guys are doing this. Oh, wow. I won't be here.
Come back and join us.
Oh my God. Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's so important to me too that our program is going to be very diverse. I want to make sure that that everybody's really well represented so that once psychedelics are available, we've got people who can take this back to their communities, whether they're Black communities, Chinese communities, Muslim communities. I mean, I really want to make sure that, that everyone has a chance at that it doesn't just go to the haves and if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I remember maybe like 2 years ago hearing a prophet telling me that they were trying to get a master's program in psychology started because all we've had is a PhD, like MA PhD program, right, combined.
Right.
And they're trying to make sure they actually had a master's program because most people were just leaving because they don't want to commit to the whole PhD before, so.
Yeah, it's a long haul.
It is. We're coming up to the ends of this. I know you have a lot to do, so I don't want to keep you too long. Do you have anything to promote? It's part of our little segment called the PSA, and anything to promote or share?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one problem with this research is because these drugs have been illegal for so long, it's hard to get any federal funding for the research. Mm-hmm. So all the research is either funded by industry sponsors, which always makes you feel a little icky, frankly, or donations. And so I just want to encourage people to please donate to our work. We have like a brand new button on our website on mentalhealthdisparities.org where people can go and donate to our research. So I want to get the word out there about that.
Okay, great. I'll add the website here, mentalhealthdisparities.org. I'll add that here. Anything else?
No, that's it. Just, spread the word and, those of you who are, in Black communities, start having conversations about it, learn about it, talk to your friends about it. It's coming. So, and if any of you who are listening to this would like to participate in our studies, please reach out to us because we do need your involvement to make this available for you.
Yeah, please do participate. And lastly, do you have anything to ask me? Any questions?
Yeah, I would love to hear more about, your observations in terms of what people are thinking and saying about psychedelics in the Black community.
I don't know much. I don't really talk to a lot. Well, I haven't spoken to many Black people about psychedelics. Like we said, it's just not a thing that, people talk about, I guess. But I think just for younger people in general, it is changing. So people are more open to, learning about them. To, it's not the 70s anymore. It's not, if you take this, you will die in 2 hours. It's, things have changed. So I think there's a change coming within the younger people as well, which will actually help and propel the research. So that's what I see.
Great. Yeah, that's good to hear. The participants we did have when I started this work were all like students and young people. So it does seem like there's a shift in attitude of the generations.
Yes, there is. Well, that's it. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and keep doing the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for getting the word out.